3 months into a family law case that she didn't know existed, Tatiana opened an email that changed everything about her future. It was a Tuesday in March. She was in a marketing meeting on the 15th floor of a glass building downtown, listening to her team present Q4 projections and budget allocations. The kind of meeting where nobody actually wants to be. The kind of meeting that exists because meetings exist. Because corporate structures demand the appearance of collaboration, even when everyone in the room would rather be doing actual work. Tatiana was taking notes. She was good at her job. She paid attention in meetings. She asked clarifying questions. She was the kind of professional who made herself indispensable through competence and focus, not through networking or performance. This had worked well for her for 20 years. Her phone buzzed on the table in front of her. She glanced at it, an email notification from a law firm she'd never heard of. Subject line, Guardianship filing, notice of legal responsibility. She dismissed it. Probably spam, probably some legal notice about identity theft or a class action lawsuit against a company she'd bought from once. She turned her attention back to the spreadsheet her colleague was presenting. But something about the subject line stayed with her. Notice of legal responsibility. The formality of it. The specificity. During a break in the meeting, Tatiana stepped out of the conference room and went to the bathroom. She was alone. She opened the email fully and read it. The words didn't immediately make sense. Tatiana read it again and again. The sentences were clear. The legal language was precise. But they described a situation that was impossible. A court order. Her name. Guardianship. Financial responsibility. For children that were not her children. That she had never agreed to raise. That she had made a deliberate choice, decades ago, never to raise. The email was dated 3 months prior. 3 months ago, someone had filed legal paperwork with her name on it. 3 months ago, a court had reviewed that paperwork and signed an order. 3 months ago, her sister had weaponized biology into legal obligation, and Tatiana had no idea it was happening. The processing happened in stages, the way shock always works. First denial. This cannot be real. Then confusion. How is this legal? Then understanding. My sister did this deliberately. Then the weight. I cannot escape this. Tatiana sat on the edge of the bathroom sink and reread the same paragraph 7 times, looking for words that would change their meaning, looking for an out, looking for some indication that this was a mistake, or a scam, or something that could be easily resolved. There was no out. A court in her state had signed a legal order. Her name was on it. She was bound to pay approximately $400 to $600 every month for the next 10 years, until the twins turned 18. She was legally responsible for medical decisions for children she had never consented to raise. She was a guardian, a legal parent, in effect, to 2 children whose existence depended on her eggs, and her generosity, and a choice she had made in a different time in her life. A choice that had been weaponized into this. She had 3 messages in the email thread, all from the law firm, all official, all stating legal facts that had already been decided. She called a lawyer. 8 years earlier, Tatiana was sitting in her apartment on a Sunday afternoon when her sister called. The call itself was not unusual. The tone of her sister's voice was. Her sister's name was Nicole. She was 4 years younger than Tatiana. She had always lived in Tatiana's shadow in the way that younger siblings sometimes do, not out of any deliberate action on Tatiana's part, but simply because Tatiana had always seemed to have things figured out first. Tatiana graduated from college. Nicole followed. Tatiana got a job in marketing. Nicole got a job in administrative work. Tatiana moved to the city. Nicole followed a year later, but Nicole had made choices that Tatiana didn't make. At 25, Nicole married her high school sweetheart. For years, this seemed fine. Nicole seemed happy. She often posted on Facebook about how she could not wait to be a mum. But fertility is complicated, and Nicole discovered, after a decade of marriage and no children, that something was wrong. And when Nicole's gynecologist ran tests, she discovered the damage, and Nicole was unlikely to conceive with her own eggs. This sent Nicole into a crisis. She was 34 years old and she wanted children. They have been trying adoption but had no luck yet. and surrogacy was expensive. But Nicole had a sister. Nicole's sister had always been clear. She did not want children, not because of some deep trauma or complicated reasoning, simply because she liked her life. She liked her work. She liked her freedom. She liked the fact that she could travel for her job, could make career decisions without consulting anyone, could plan her future based solely on what she wanted. But Nicole's sister had something that Nicole desperately wanted: fertility. Eggs that would give her the biological connection to children that she craved. So Nicole called and asked. The conversation was careful, tentative. Nicole started by asking Tatiana if she'd ever thought about donating eggs. Not asking Tatiana to donate, not yet. Just asking if she'd ever considered it as a theoretical option. Tatiana said she hadn't. She was happy with her life. She didn't have a partner or children. She planned on keeping both of those facts true. Nicole said, I know you've never wanted kids, but would you ever consider it as a way to help me? The ask hung there, simple and enormous. Tatiana didn't answer immediately. She listened to what Nicole was telling her about the years of trying to conceive, about the physical pain, about the loss of hope, about wanting to be a mother again, to have that biological connection, and finding that door closing. Tatiana understood why Nicole was asking. She understood the love underneath the ask, and the desperation. She said, let me think about it. For a month, Tatiana thought about it. She researched the medical process. She read about egg retrieval procedures, the risks of infection, the hormone treatments. She learned that egg donation was a medical procedure that happened in hospitals and clinics all the time. She also learned about the emotional weight of it, biological connection to children raised by someone else. The question of whether she would see herself in them. The question of whether she would feel something, watching her biological children be raised by her sister. She thought about her own childhood, her own relationship with her mother, the things she had loved about it, the things she had rebelled against, the ways she had decided, as an adult, that she wanted something different. And she thought about Nicole, about her sister's longing, about the fact that this was something she could give, something that wasn't actually costing her the future she wanted. After a month, Tatiana called Nicole back and said, okay, I'll do it. The relief in Nicole's voice was audible, palpable. Years of hope and grief condensed into a single exhaled breath of gratitude. The medical process took months. Hormone injections that Tatiana administered to herself, monitoring appointments at a fertility clinic, ultrasounds to track the development of her eggs, the physical side effects, bloating, mood shifts, fatigue, the emotional weight of her body being medicalized in service of someone else's dream. Tatiana did all of it, not happily exactly, but willingly. This was a gift she was giving. This was love expressed through her body and her medical risk, and her willingness to endure discomfort. The egg retrieval happened on a November morning. Anesthesia. A procedure that took 30 minutes. Tatiana woke up sore and foggy. 12 eggs were retrieved. They would be fertilized with her brother-in-law's sperm. 2 embryos would be implanted into Nicole. Nicole got pregnant. The pregnancy was successful. No complications this time, because Nicole's brother-in-law's sperm was healthy, and the embryos were young and viable. Nicole gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. Tatiana went to the hospital when they were born. She held them in the hospital room and felt something complicated. Joy for her sister, yes. Love for the babies, yes. But also the clear knowledge that these children were not hers, were not meant to be hers, and that she had no desire for them to be hers. She loved them as an aunt, that was the deal. Nicole cried when she held the twins. Her husband cried. Tatiana's parents cried. The hospital staff cried, because this is what they did when babies were born to families who wanted them so badly. Tatiana held the babies and thought, this is why I did this. This moment, this joy, this completion of my sister's family, this was worth the medical procedures, the risk, the physical discomfort. She was happy for her sister, in a way that was uncomplicated and true. In the years after the twins were born, Tatiana was their aunt. She visited regularly. She babysat. She took them to museums and parks. She bought them birthday presents. She loved them in the way that aunts love nieces and nephews. deeply, but with clear boundaries. She was not their mother. She was the aunt who had done something extraordinary to help her sister, and now she was part of their lives in the way that aunts are. Nicole was grateful. She said thank you often. She posted photos on social media, crediting Tatiana with the gift of the twins. "I couldn't have done this without my sister," Nicole wrote. "She gave me the greatest gift of my life." Tatiana read these posts and felt warm, felt like the gift had been received, felt like the transaction was complete and healthy and good. She didn't know that Nicole was also watching. 2 years ago, things began to change. Nicole's marriage, which had seemed stable for the better part of a decade, started to fracture. Not dramatically, not with infidelity accusations or screaming fights. Just the slow erosion that happens when two people grow apart, when life becomes mundane, when the spark that brought them together gutters out under the weight of routine. Nicole's husband, David, was working late more often, coming home exhausted, spending weekends on his laptop handling work emails. He and Nicole were having sex less frequently. They were communicating less. They were becoming, in the way that some long-term couples do, more like roommates than partners. Nicole noticed. Nicole felt it. Nicole tried to address it, but David kept deflecting. Said work was stressful. Said he just needed space sometimes. Said marriage was always like this after enough years. Meanwhile, Tatiana's life was moving in the opposite direction. Tatiana's marriage, which had ended 3 years earlier in an amicable divorce, had left her financially stable and emotionally freed. She had thrown herself into her career. She had gotten promoted. She had taken on a leadership role in her company. She had negotiated a salary that was now well into 6 figures. She was also dating again for the first time since her divorce. She had met someone through work connections, a woman named Sophia. They had chemistry. They had similar senses of humor. They had time for each other because neither of them had children tethering them to particular schedules. Tatiana and Sophia were talking about the future, about whether they wanted to move in together, about whether this could become something serious and real. Tatiana was traveling more for work. She was taking trips to conferences in Las Vegas and New York and San Francisco. She was planning a vacation to Costa Rica with Sophia. She was building a life that was entirely her own design. She was, objectively, thriving. Nicole was watching this trajectory, and something broke inside her. It started with small comments. When Tatiana mentioned a work promotion, Nicole said, "Must be nice to only have to worry about yourself." When Tatiana talked about a trip she was planning, Nicole said, "Some of us have actual responsibilities we can't just leave behind." When Tatiana mentioned dating Sophia, Nicole said, "I'm glad you're staying unattached." That's the smart choice. Don't tie yourself down to anyone. Tatiana didn't understand the edge in these comments. She tried to include Nicole in her life. She invited Nicole and the twins to go out for dinner together. Nicole declined, saying the twins had school events or activities. Tatiana invited Nicole to a work cocktail party. Nicole said she couldn't get a babysitter. Tatiana offered to babysit so Nicole could have a night out with her husband. Nicole declined, saying David was probably working late anyway. The distance between them grew, not because of anything Tatiana had done, but because Nicole was building a narrative in her head. A narrative where Tatiana had it all. A narrative where Tatiana didn't deserve it all. A narrative where Tatiana had taken something from Nicole, the twins, motherhood, and then had the audacity to be happy anyway. Meanwhile, Nicole's marriage continued to deteriorate. David moved into the guest room. They stopped pretending to be a couple in front of friends. Nicole realized she was going to lose this marriage. She was going to lose the identity of married woman. She was going to lose the financial security that came with David's salary. And Tatiana was out there, thriving. Alone, yes, but by choice. Free, yes, with nothing tying her down. Successful, yes, with money of her own and no one to answer to. Nicole's resentment calcified into something harder. Nicole hired a divorce attorney. During the consultation, she told the attorney about the twins. She told the attorney that she was worried about custody. She told the attorney that she had no income of her own, that she had been a stay-at-home mother for years, that she would struggle financially if David got custody. The attorney listened and then asked, "Do you have anyone who might be obligated to help support the twins?" Nicole thought about this. She thought about Tatiana. She thought about the eggs. She thought about the fact that Tatiana was wealthy. She thought about the fact that Tatiana had biological connection to the twins. She thought about the fact that Tatiana had given her this gift, this incredible gift, this thing that had made Nicole's life possible. She thought about weaponizing it. The attorney said, "There are cases where courts recognize that biological egg donors have parental obligations, especially if they're involved in the child's life. We could argue that your sister, as the biological mother, should be responsible for supporting the children. That would give you leverage in the custody negotiations, and it would give you financial stability." Nicole didn't say yes immediately, but she didn't say no either. She went home and thought about it. She thought about Tatiana's life. She thought about how unfair it was. She thought about how much easier Tatiana had it. No children, no failed marriage, no financial desperation. She thought about the twins. She thought about how much they loved their aunt. She thought about how much Tatiana visited, how involved she was, how much the twins asked for her. She thought, Tatiana should be responsible for this. Tatiana's eggs made these children possible. Tatiana should be paying for them. The logic was circular and unjust, but it felt true to Nicole. It felt like balance. It felt like justice. She called the attorney back and said, "Let's do it. Let's file the guardianship petition." The attorney asked if Tatiana had any documentation of agreeing to financial responsibility. Nicole said, "No, but I have the medical records of the egg donation. I can get the birth certificates that show the connection. I can testify that she's always been involved with them. I can make an argument." The attorney said, "Okay, this will be a legal strategy. We'll frame it as the biological mother having parental obligations that should be enforced by the court. We'll say you need her financial support to maintain stability during the custody negotiations. We'll argue that she's been acting like a parent and therefore has parental responsibilities." He did not mention that this argument had almost no legal basis. He was being paid to win, not to be honest about the weakness of the case. Nicole agreed to move forward. She went to the office and signed documents. She paid the retainer fee, $5,000, drawn from money David had given her for household expenses. She provided the attorney with medical records and birth certificates and testimonies about Tatiana's involvement with the twins. She did not tell Tatiana what she was doing. She told no one what she was doing, because if Tatiana found out before the filing was complete, Tatiana might preempt it, might hire her own attorney, might build a defense. Nicole filed the petition in secret. She did it while Tatiana was at work. She did it while Tatiana was planning a vacation with Sophia. She did it while Tatiana was living her life, unaware that her sister was using the court system to trap her. 3 months later, the petition made its way to a judge. The judge, scanning the documents, saw biological connection through egg donation, claims of parental involvement, financial stability of the biological mother. The judge, without deep scrutiny, signed off on it. The guardianship filing was official. Nicole felt relief wash over her. She had done something. She had taken action. She had made sure that Tatiana couldn't just move on and ignore her problems. Tatiana was now legally bound. Tatiana was now responsible. Tatiana was now trapped. What Nicole didn't understand was that she had just started a chain of events that would destroy both of their lives. Before we go any further, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We read every single one, and if this story is hitting close to home, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss what's coming next. The guardianship filing was assigned to a judge named Patricia Williams. Judge Williams had been on the bench for 15 years. She had seen custody disputes, divorce proceedings, and guardianship cases before. She had seen the terrible and wonderful things that families did to each other in the name of law and order. Judge Williams, reviewing the file, saw a petition from Nicole claiming that Tatiana had parental obligations based on egg donation. Judge Williams noted the birth certificates showing the biological connection. Judge Williams reviewed the claims that Tatiana had acted as a parental figure. Judge Williams, without conducting a full hearing or reviewing evidence beyond the petition itself, signed the guardianship order. This was procedural. This was standard. This was how many guardianship petitions moved through the system, filed, reviewed, approved, without the person being made responsible understanding that it was happening. The guardianship order stated that Tatiana was to be co-guardian of the twins alongside David, their biological father. The order stated that Tatiana was financially responsible for all medical expenses and education-related costs for the minors, estimated at $400 to $600 monthly, until the minors reached the age of 18. The law firm notified Tatiana by mail. 3 copies, all official, all legally binding. This was the letter she opened in the bathroom at work. But before Tatiana opened that letter, Nicole had already set the next part of the betrayal in motion. Nicole had started telling people a different story than the truth. She had told her parents, "Tatiana is trying to take the twins from me. She's been saying she should have custody because she's the biological mother. I had to file guardianship paperwork to protect them." None of this was true. Tatiana had never said any of these things. Tatiana had never tried to take the twins. Tatiana loved the twins, but she had never expressed any desire to be their mother. But once Nicole said this to her parents, it became, in the family narrative, real. Tatiana's parents called her, confused. "Why are you trying to take your sister's kids?" they asked. Tatiana said, "I'm not. I have no idea what she's talking about." Her parents didn't believe her. They believed Nicole because Nicole was the one in crisis. Nicole was the one going through a divorce. Nicole was the one who had always seemed to need help. Nicole told people at her church, "Tatiana is trying to claim the twins as hers. But she's saying she's their biological mother and wants to take custody. She's unstable and unreliable." Nicole told her divorce attorney, "Tatiana has always been cold and unstable. She doesn't really care about the children. She's just trying to use them as a way to manipulate me during this divorce." All of this was filed as evidence and they became part of the official record. But none of it was true. The attorney, representing Nicole, crafted arguments that the guardianship filing was necessary to protect the children from a mother, Tatiana, who was unreliable and potentially dangerous. The attorney used phrases like avoiding parental responsibility and biological mother refusing her obligations. These phrases, once they appeared in legal documents, took on the weight of fact. They were repeated in depositions. They were mentioned in correspondence. They became part of the framework through which the court would eventually view Tatiana's case. And Tatiana had no idea any of this was happening. She was at work. She was planning a vacation. She was building a future with Sophia. She was thriving. She was alive. She was happy. And her sister was, behind a curtain of legal machinery, systematically destroying the narrative of Tatiana's own life. After Tatiana hired a lawyer and understood the scope of what she was facing, the reality of her situation began to settle like a weight. She was legally bound to a decade of financial responsibility for children she had never consented to raise. She was legally bound to make medical and educational decisions for those children. She was legally bound to have her name associated with guardianship of those children. She could not escape this by simply choosing to walk away. There were legal consequences for refusing guardianship. There were financial consequences for refusing to pay child support. There was no legal escape hatch that would allow her to simply opt out of this cage. Her attorney, Marcus, explained the options: fight it, which would cost money and take months, and was not guaranteed to win; accept it, which would bind her for a decade; or negotiate a settlement where Tatiana would pay Nicole a sum of money to withdraw the guardianship filing. Tatiana said, "How much money?" Marcus said, "She'll probably ask for $30,000 or $40,000, maybe more. She might also try to extract a monthly payment agreement." Tatiana, who made good money, still felt the shock of those numbers. $30,000 or $40,000. That was money she didn't have sitting around. That was money she would have to take from her savings, from her retirement contributions, from the financial cushion she had spent years building. She said, "What if I just refuse? What if I tell the court I didn't consent to any of this?" Marcus said, "That's the fight I mentioned. That would take months. It would cost maybe $15,000 to $20,000 in legal fees, and there's a chance we'd lose, because the courts do recognize some concept of biological parental obligation in surrogacy cases. Tatiana felt trapped by legal machinery that was designed to protect children but was being weaponized against her. She said, "Let me think about it." But thinking about it meant thinking about her future. It meant understanding that her life had fundamentally changed in the moment she opened that email. She could not take that 2-week trip to Costa Rica with Sophia that she had been planning. She had to be available for the twins. She had to be a legal guardian. She had to consider their needs in her decision-making. She could not take that promotion at work that required her to relocate to the New York office. The guardianship order required her to stay in the state where the children resided. She was legally bound to geography. She could not let her relationship with Sophia develop without addressing what Sophia would be taking on. Tatiana had to tell Sophia, "By the way, I'm legally responsible for 2 children that aren't mine, and I'm fighting with my sister in family court." Sophia's reaction was complicated. She was supportive initially, but as the legal battles dragged on, as the emails from lawyers multiplied, as Tatiana's attention became divided between her own life and this legal entanglement, Sophia pulled back. After 6 months of Tatiana being consumed by the guardianship case, Sophia said, "I care about you, but I didn't sign up for this level of family drama. I need to be with someone who can be present with me, someone whose life isn't being controlled by their sister's legal filings." Tatiana understood. She couldn't even argue. Sophia was right. Tatiana's life was no longer her own. Sophia left. Tatiana, alone in her apartment, understood the full scope of what her sister had done. Nicole hadn't just trapped her in a legal obligation. Nicole had trapped her in a future that eliminated her choices. She could not travel. She could not relocate for career advancement. She could not build romantic relationships without the other person understanding they were getting Tatiana plus legal entanglement with the twins. Nicole had taken Tatiana's agency and locked it in legal machinery. Tatiana's legal bills began to accumulate. Marcus, her attorney, charged by the hour. Every phone call was an hour. Every email exchange was 6 minutes. Every court filing cost $500. Every deposition cost $2,000. Tatiana, in the first 3 months, spent $8,000 on legal fees trying to defend herself against a case she hadn't started. She called Marcus and asked, "What if we just settled? What if we paid Nicole to withdraw this?" Marcus said, "I've been in contact with her attorney. They're asking for $45,000 and monthly child support of $500 until the twins turn 18. $45,000. That was half of Tatiana's annual savings. That was money she had been saving for retirement. That was money she had spent years accumulating. And then monthly payments that would continue for the next decade. Tatiana said, "No, I'm not paying her for something I didn't agree to. That's rewarding the betrayal." So she fought. But fighting meant more legal bills. Fighting meant more court appearances. Fighting meant more of her life being consumed by this case that had nothing to do with her choices and everything to do with her sister's resentment. The twins, who she loved, still reached out to her. They didn't understand the legal drama. They just knew their aunt wasn't coming to visit as much. They knew something was wrong. Tatiana visited them once, 3 months into the case. She played with them. She helped them with homework. She loved them in the way she always had, but something had changed. The freedom in that love was gone. Now, every interaction felt weighted by legal obligation. She was their guardian, not their aunt. She was legally responsible, not freely loving. The twins didn't understand this distinction. They just knew they loved their aunt, and their aunt seemed sad. Tatiana's family, believing Nicole's lies, had mostly abandoned her. Tatiana's parents called occasionally, but the conversations were strained. They believed Nicole when Nicole said Tatiana was cold and unstable. They didn't understand why Tatiana would fight so hard against something that should be easy, helping her sister and the twins. Nobody understood that fighting was the only way to maintain her agency. Nobody understood that accepting this trap would mean accepting that her sister could control her life through legal machinery. So Tatiana fought, and the legal machinery ground on. 8 months into the guardianship case, Tatiana realized something. She was losing. Not in court necessarily, but in her own life, she was hemorrhaging money, she was losing relationships, she was losing time, she was losing pieces of herself to a legal battle that was consuming her. She had already spent $16,000 on legal fees. Her attorney, Marcus, was competent but not brilliant. He was the kind of attorney who would eventually win, maybe, through grinding persistence, but who would take a long time and charge a lot of money to do it. Tatiana needed something different. She needed an attorney who specialized in exactly this kind of family law manipulation, who understood the specific dynamics of guardianship disputes, who could see through the arguments and expose them for what they were, a calculated trap designed to control her. She found Jennifer Chen, a family law attorney who had spent 15 years fighting cases exactly like this one. Jennifer had a different energy. She read through Tatiana's file and said calmly, "Your sister's argument has no legal foundation. An egg donation, without a formal surrogacy agreement, does not create parental obligation. The court shouldn't have signed this in the first place. We're going to destroy this case." Tatiana, who had been drowning, felt something shift. She felt, for the first time, like she might have power. Jennifer required a retainer of $10,000. It was more money. It was money that Tatiana didn't want to spend. But she spent it because she understood. Spending more money now might save her from spending monthly payments for the next decade. Jennifer's strategy was different from Marcus's. She didn't just defend, she attacked. She subpoenaed Nicole's communications. She got the text messages between Nicole and her attorney, where they discussed making Tatiana legally responsible and using her wealth against her. She got emails showing that this was a deliberate strategy, not a good faith guardianship filing. She found the text exchange between Nicole and a friend, where Nicole said, "I'm going to make her responsible for them, then she can't just leave me." That text message was everything. It proved premeditation. It proved malice. It proved that this guardianship filing was not about protecting the twins, but about controlling Tatiana. Jennifer also reached out to David, Nicole's husband. She explained the situation and asked if he would testify. David, who hadn't known about the guardianship filing, who was blindsided by the whole thing, was angry at Nicole. David agreed to testify. He agreed to provide evidence. He became Tatiana's witness in her own defense. During the depositions, Nicole had to answer, under oath, questions about her motivations. She had to explain why she filed guardianship paperwork without telling Tatiana. She had to explain why she told her attorney that she wanted to make Tatiana responsible. Under oath, Nicole's case collapsed. She admitted she was angry at Tatiana. She admitted she wanted leverage in the custody dispute. She admitted she filed the papers knowing Tatiana didn't consent. She essentially admitted to intentional entrapment. Jennifer brought in expert witnesses. A reproductive rights attorney testified that egg donation, without a formal surrogacy agreement, does not create legal parental obligation. A family law professor testified that the guardianship filing had no legal foundation. David testified that he didn't know about the guardianship filing, that he loved the twins, that he was willing to be their sole guardian if necessary, that Nicole's filing was about control, not protection. Tatiana testified. She explained the egg donation. She explained that she loved the twins. She explained that she never agreed to guardianship or financial responsibility. She explained that opening that email at work was the moment she understood her sister had weaponized their family's biology against her. The evidence accumulated. The case shifted. What had seemed, 8 months earlier, like a foregone conclusion. Nicole had filed. The court had signed. Tatiana was bound. Began to unravel. Judge Patricia Williams, who had signed the initial guardianship order without much scrutiny, now had to review the evidence of premeditation and entrapment. She had to confront the fact that she had signed an order that had no legal basis. She scheduled a hearing to revisit the guardianship order. The hearing took place on a cold November morning, 14 months after Tatiana opened that email in the bathroom at work. Judge Williams reviewed the evidence. She read the text messages showing premeditation. She reviewed the testimony from David and the expert witnesses. She reviewed Tatiana's testimony and Nicole's testimony and the documentation that showed Nicole had acted deliberately to trap her sister. Judge Williams said, "The petitioner's claim that the biological egg donor has parental obligations is not supported by law. An egg donation, without a formal surrogacy agreement, does not establish legal parental status. The petitioner's testimony and evidence indicate a deliberate attempt to create a guardianship filing for strategic purposes, not to protect the minors." She continued, "The respondent never agreed to guardianship. The respondent never agreed to financial responsibility. The petitioner's filing appears to be retaliation for personal reasons, not a legitimate protective measure." Judge Williams ruled, the guardianship filing is denied. However, given the biological connection and the respondent's prior relationship with the minors, the court recommends shared guardianship with the father, with the respondent available for consultation on medical and educational decisions, but with no financial responsibility. Tatiana had won, but the victory came with complications. In the same proceeding, the judge addressed Nicole's divorce. Having seen evidence of Nicole's manipulative behavior in the guardianship case, the judge was skeptical of Nicole's other claims. The judge awarded primary custody to David. Nicole received visitation rights, but she was no longer the primary caregiver. Nicole had tried to trap Tatiana legally and financially. In doing so, she had exposed herself as someone willing to use children as tools for control. The judge had seen that clearly. Nicole lost her marriage. Nicole lost primary custody of her children. Nicole lost her credibility in the eyes of the court. Nicole also lost her sister. When the judgment was read, Tatiana felt something complex. Relief, yes. The cage was open. She could travel again. She could make decisions. She could live her life. But she was also devastated. Her sister had deliberately weaponized biology against her. Her sister had lied under oath. Her sister had lost custody of her own children because of her manipulation. Tatiana's parents, who had believed Nicole's lies, now had to confront the truth. They heard the judge explain that Nicole had filed the guardianship petition deliberately, that Nicole had spread false stories about Tatiana, that Nicole had used legal machinery to trap her daughter. They apologized to Tatiana, but something was broken between them. The family, which had seemed functional just 18 months ago, was fractured, not broken entirely, but fractured in the way that betrayal fractures things. There is no going back. There is only going forward differently. Tatiana had spent $23,000 on legal fees. She had lost her relationship with Sophia. She had lost months of her life to court proceedings. She had lost in some ways her relationship with her parents. But she had kept her agency. She had refused to be trapped. She had fought back. She had won. 6 months after the judge's ruling, Tatiana booked a flight to Tokyo, 2 weeks, alone. She didn't need anyone's permission. She didn't need to notify the court. She just needed a passport and the courage to reclaim what her sister had tried to steal. She sat on the airplane and cried, not from sadness, from relief, from the physical release of having been trapped and then freed. In Tokyo, Tatiana walked through temples. She ate ramen at 3 in the morning. She sat in parks and watched the city move around her. She thought about nothing except what was right in front of her. She was present. She was free. When she returned to the United States, she had dinner with someone new. A person she met through work. They talked about travel and books and work and life. Tatiana told them, early on, about the guardianship case. She didn't hide it. She explained what had happened. She explained what it meant. The person listened and said, "That sounds incredibly painful. But you survived it. You fought it. You didn't let it destroy you." Tatiana felt something unfold in her chest. The possibility that she could move forward, that her life could become normal again, that the trauma of the case didn't have to define her future. 6 months of dating became a year. Tatiana and this person moved in together. They talked about futures. Not children necessarily, but futures that were shared and equal, and built on trust, rather than on manipulation. Tatiana also maintained her relationship with the twins. She was their guardian, on paper, but she was also their aunt, in practice. She visited them, she helped them with homework, she took them to museums, she loved them. But the love was different now. It was bounded. It was clear. It was not weighed down by legal obligation or forced responsibility. She loved them because she chose to, not because she was legally bound to. David, the twins' father, was grateful for this. He had won custody of them, but he needed support. Tatiana could provide that support now, freely, without the cage of the court order making every interaction feel like an obligation. Tatiana did not see or speak to Nicole. The betrayal was too profound. The breach of trust was too complete. Some relationships can recover from betrayal, some cannot. Tatiana's relationship with her parents recovered, gradually. They had been wrong to believe Nicole's lies. They had been wrong to doubt Tatiana. But they were also just people who had believed their vulnerable daughter over their successful one. They learned their lesson. Tatiana's career advanced. She took the promotion she couldn't take during the lawsuit. She traveled to New York and Singapore and London for work. She built professional success that was independent and solid and entirely hers. One evening, 2 years after the judgment, Tatiana was sitting in a cafe in Barcelona with her partner. She was thinking about nothing in particular, just drinking coffee, just being alive. And she realized she was happy, not despite what had happened, not because of what had happened, simply because she had refused to be broken by it. She had fought back. She had won. She had reclaimed her agency. She had taken her life back. Her sister had tried to trap her in legal machinery. Her sister had weaponized biology into obligation. Her sister had spread lies. Her sister had tried to take Tatiana's future and control it. Tatiana had fought back, and she had won, not through revenge, not through becoming more powerful than her sister or more successful than her sister, simply through refusing to be broken, through fighting, through reclaiming her agency. The cage had opened. Tatiana had walked out. Tatiana had built a life on her own terms. She was free. If you enjoyed this, please click on the like button and subscribe. New stories dropping regularly.